Okay, so we've all heard the story of someone's aunt or whatever went vegan and then they almost died of a nutrient deficiency. And maybe those stories are a bit exaggerated, but it really does happen that some people are on a plant-based diet and then they run into these issues and that keeps them from sticking to it. So I've put together a list of the 6 biggest red flags that I've noticed that cause people to run into health issues. So as long as you avoid these, you're more likely than not gonna thrive and feel great on your plant-based diet. Alright, so let's get into it. So the first big red flag is if you don't have a source of omega-3 in your diet. Omega-3s are an essential fat, and so we must get it from food. So according to Harvard School of Public Health, they're important for cell membranes, they're important for making hormones, and they've been shown to prevent heart disease and stroke and some forms of cancer. Yeah, so important stuff. Because you know how everyone's always talking about how fish is so good for you? Well yeah, it's usually the omega-3s they're talking about. And in my experience, a lot of people who end up abandoning their plant-based diet is because they weren't getting enough omega-3s. So if you have decided to leave the fishies alone, you need a good source of these. And the good news is that it's really easy to get omega-3 on a plant-based diet. So the absolute best plant sources of omega-3 are chia seeds and flax seeds. And with flax seeds, you especially have to make sure that they're ground. Like blended up. If you've ever had flax seed not blended up, you may have noticed it on your toilet paper. I'm just saying. Yeah, I don't know. Those seeds could survive nuclear bombs. I don't know. But I'd consider these the primary sources of omega-3. Walnuts and hemp seeds are also sources of omega-3, but I'd consider them more supplementary, like they're okay. And there are other ones too, but I'd say those 4 are the main ones that you should know about. And yeah, just like add 10 to 20 grams of flax or chia seed in your breakfast every day. It can be like smoothies or oatmeal or in your pancake batter. And the advantage of chia and flax is that you also get a boost of a ton of other nutrients. So you get a lot of fiber. In chia's case, you get a lot of calcium. They both got some protein. And so what I personally do is I have 10 to 20 grams of chia or flax seed, like I said, in my breakfast every day. And on some days, I take an algae-based omega-3 supplement as well. Okay, another big red flag is if you're not taking a B12 supplement. Vitamin B12 is needed to form red blood cells and DNA. It's also a key player in the function and development of brain and nerve cells. And according to this, 40% of people in Western populations have a status of either low or deficient in B12. So it's something that we should probably all be supplementing anyways, eating plant-based or not. And nowadays, plant milks are fortified with B12, and you find it in some foods like nutritional yeast, but yeah, I would not risk a B12 deficiency. So yeah, just make sure you have a good source of B12. I take a B12 supplement a few times a week. I leave it on the counter next to the vitamin D and the omega-3 supplement that I mentioned earlier. And yeah, just to remind me every morning to take it. If you're not eating legumes, that's a big red flag. Legumes are your chickpeas, lentils, split peas, beans, and legumes are some of the best foods you can be eating. They're really great because they fill the nutrient gap that animal products would have otherwise filled. They're a high source of protein, iron, zinc, which are some of the top things that I hear anecdotally that people feel like they struggle to get on a plant-based diet. And you can get all those nutrients from other sources, but eating these legumes just makes it so easy to get them all in one place. Plus you get the fiber and just a great cast of nutrients. And they're associated with amazing health outcomes. Take this study for example. They found that legumes are the most important dietary predictor of survival in older people. They found that every 20 grams of daily legume intake was associated with 8% less risk of premature death. Hey, and don't be afraid of the canned beans either. Dr. Michael Greger concludes that canned beans are as healthy as boiled beans with the exception of the sodium content, citing a 2011 study. And another thing not to be afraid of is don't be afraid of the flatulence. Farting. A study showed that when people were given legumes, in the vast majority of cases, there was either no increase in flatulence or it went away after a few weeks. And so my experience is that yes, I did fart a lot when I started eating a plant-based diet, and now I fart like a normal amount. But honestly, I feel like you should try to eat legumes as much as you used to eat meat. Because especially in the US, I feel like we really do not have a culture of eating any beans or any legumes. I don't know, correct me if y'all think I'm wrong, my fellow patriots. And the way that I eat a lot of legumes in my life is I eat a lot of hummus. Yes, that counts. You can find pasta made from legumes, like banza. I used to eat a ton of that when I lived in the US. Chickpea flour, for example, to make pancakes. I used to do that all the time too. Or just dump a can of chickpeas or any legume on a pasta or bowl you have, or a salad, if you eat salads. I don't like salads. But yeah, I feel like legumes are a big staple that people often miss. And if you're not eating them, I just feel like that's gonna make it easier to miss some of the key nutrients. All right, next red flag, no source of iodine. So you need iodine for thyroid function, and according to the Harvard School of Public Health, these are your sources of iodine. And if you eliminate all the animal options, that basically leaves you with seaweed and iodized salt. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not about to start buying infant formula. And given those two options, I've never really regularly purchased seaweed ever. I don't really see that changing in the future. I don't know, I just don't make a lot of at-home sushi, so it's the iodized salt for me. So Dr. Michael Greger prefers seaweed because, you know, it's like a whole food source of iodine, but you can't win them all. The iodized salt is just easy for me. And so if you do the iodized salt route, make sure that your salt is iodized. Don't be eating that Himalayan pink salt or whatever. I'm kidding, you can if you want, but a lot of the times that stuff doesn't have iodine. So just make sure that you do have a source of iodine in your diet. And I think you can also supplement it with the preferred supplement being potassium iodide, but I'm not really sure on that one. I don't even do that, so I don't know, if that interests you, maybe look that one up. Okay, so if you're not getting enough fat, that's a big red flag. So I don't know, you may be eating a huge plate of veggies and beans and be saying, see Danesh, I am eating legumes, but that's not enough. Make sure that you're also including fat in your diet. The chia and flax seeds I mentioned before are a great source of fat, and also make sure you're including nuts, seeds, nut butters, tofu, avocados, because fat's actually important for absorbing certain important nutrients. They even conducted this study one time where they gave people salad and they gave them fat-free, reduced fat, and full fat dressing. And what they found was that when the salad was eaten with fat-free dressing, the absorption of the nutrients that they were measuring in the study was negligible. So in other words, they barely absorbed the nutrients. Here's a graph so you can see the difference in absorption of one of the nutrients that they were measuring. So anyways, even if you think you're doing your body good by eating a salad, you might be missing out on a lot of those important nutrients if you don't have a fat source in it. And for people with periods, apparently not having enough fat can mess with your ovulation cycle. I've even heard anecdotally of people losing their periods when they don't eat enough fat. So the way that I do this in my life is I eat a lot of peanut butter, and like I said, hummus still counts, and even just tahini on its own, avocados. Those are all some of my favorite fat sources that I include in basically every savory meal, or I try to anyways. But seriously, the easiest and most low effort way to add a fat source is to just sprinkle some sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds on whatever dish you're having. It adds a bit of a crunch and it gives you that fat source. And it doesn't have to be those seeds, it can be whatever, you know, nuts you have on hand. And I get that tahini, for example, isn't accessible everywhere, but if you do have access to tahini, it's so easy to just dribble that on everything and it just goes with everything, even sweet stuff. Okay, so finally, if you're feeling really tired or you're feeling like you don't have energy and you're avoiding all of the red flags that I mentioned before, anecdotally in my life when this is happening to someone, it's usually because they're not eating enough calories. Especially if you're used to eating animal products, whole plant foods tend to be less calorie dense. So you have to eat more volume than you ever did before to get the same amount of calories. So for example, if on average every plate of food you had was 800 calories, well maybe all of a sudden your new plate is now 500 calories. And so do that 3 times a day, and you may have been eating 2,400 calories before, and now you're eating 1,500. So that's a big dip in calories. And remember, calories are a source of energy, so if you're eating fewer than before, I mean, of course you're gonna have less energy. So you can either try tracking your calories on an app like Chronometer, and for the best results, you should actually weigh your food out because your guesstimate is probably way off. Trust me, I know from personal experience. Or if you don't wanna do all that, just try eating more food and see how you feel. See if that solves it. So there you go. Those are the big red flags to look out for on your plant-based diet. And remember, none of these things are so dire that if you go on vacation for a week and you miss one of the things I talked about earlier, you're gonna get a nutrient deficiency and feel terrible and get sick. No. Like most things in life, as long as you're doing it right, most of the time, you're most likely gonna be just fine. And another thing you might be thinking is, well, if this diet is so healthy, why do I gotta think about all this stuff? Why do I have to plan? And the fact is that not a lot of people are eating plant-based diets. So there isn't as much tribal knowledge like eat your veggies, you know? If you're on a non-vegan diet and you're not eating your veggies and you get sick, well, people are gonna say, yeah, not a big surprise. So we just gotta make sure that people similarly know what to look out for on a plant-based diet. And I'll add that besides the red flags that I've mentioned, the more that your diet is composed of a variety of whole plant foods, the better health outcomes you're gonna have. And remember, y'all, I'm just some guy on the internet. I am not a health professional. It's always a good idea to talk to a plant-based dietitian if you do have the resources. Well, in any case, here's actually an example of what I eat in a day. I think I do a pretty good job of covering all the bases I just talked about earlier. So if you're interested, take a look. In the meantime, I hope you feel less anxious about your plant-based diet. It really isn't as hard as people make it out to be. Don't forget to take your B12 supplement. If you found this video helpful, a like and a subscribe would mean a lot to me. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one.